there are some things that we're going to have to let go of that feel risky, that seems like, well, we could lose. Well, you got to be willing to risk your comfort. You got to be willing to risk your certainty. You got to be willing to risk your feelings of stability to go where you want to go. And if you want to achieve above average returns, if you want to go big, it's about embracing that risk, leveraging that risk. It being the ultimate differentiator is huge.
Welcome to Elevate, the masterclass where we dissect the elements of exceptional achievement and lifestyle design with a focus on personal growth and real estate investing. Now, here's your host, Tyler Chesser.
Elevate Nation, welcome back. This is Tyler Chesser. I'm so thankful to have you here, and I'm blessed and grateful to be sitting down finally for another episode of an Elevate exclusive with Tyler. You've got me, myself, and I today. No interview, but I'm excited to be sitting down with you in this episode where you are going to learn the power of going big, why it's so important for you, and how to do it in real estate and in your life. And I've been thinking about this concept for quite a while. In fact, probably 2.5 years or so since I had Steven Kotler on the podcast, where he shared with me this groundbreaking idea that humans are literally designed to go big. Not going big is cripplingly bad for us. And you want to go check out that episode. That's 132. The title of that episode with Steven Kotler is Flow, Unlocking Peak Human Performance. And if you know anything about Steven Kotler, he wrote the book, The Art of Impossible. He wrote Bold with Peter Diamandis, and he's written several other groundbreaking, phenomenal books. And this is a Pulitzer Prize winning individual and someone who is helping us continue to understand what is possible as human beings. And guess what? There's nothing that's impossible. We can continue to raise a new watermark. And for anyone listening to this podcast today, your definition of big may be different from mine or any of your other friends who may be listening to this podcast as well. And that's okay. And that's one of the beautiful things about the human condition is that we're all different. We're all unique. And I want to share with you some of my thoughts about this. Before I dive into this episode, I want to remind you that Elevate Podcast is all about mindset, mind expansion, and personal development for high-performing real estate investors. Of course, I'm your host, Tyler Chesser, and I am a professional real estate investor and entrepreneur. It is my job to decode the stories, habits, and multifaceted expertise of world-class investors and other experts so you can elevate your performance and lifestyle. And by the way, I want to ask you the question that I always ask. Are you ready to take it to another level? By the way, it is time, and there's always another level. No matter where you are, there's always another level to expand to. And that's what we're going to do today. And so I want to thank you so much for listening. I want to thank you so much for showing up and investing in yourself. And I want to invite you to pay the fee. The fee is to pay it forward. All you have to do is just share this episode with one person, whether it's a friend, acquaintance, colleague, business associate, somebody that you just met, maybe somebody that you don't even know. Just pay it forward and share this episode. All you have to do is grab that share link in the podcast app, wherever you're listening, or if you're watching on YouTube, hit that share button. It means the world to me. It means the world to our team as we continue to invest in you. So I want to thank you for doing that. I also want to ask you, if you have not done so already, to please give us a rating and a review and subscribe or follow to Elevate Podcasts on wherever it is that you listen or watch podcasts. It's very important to us. And of course, you want to be notified when the next episode comes out because we're going to continue to bring tremendous value. This episode today is one that I've sat down and really thought about very deeply. And I'm not just riffing with you and just, thinking off the top of my head. So I just want you to really get ready to take some notes here. Get ready to be action oriented in the way that you engage in today's podcast. So with that said, let's dive in. So over the past 7 to 8 years, I have become obsessed with human potential. And really, I think it's been propelled in many aspects from the last 4 years of being your host for this podcast. I'd love to just make a mention that I would love for you to not listen to the early episodes of this podcast because it would make me a little bit embarrassed because things have changed. And, of course, I've gotten a little bit better as your host, and hopefully you're seeing that. And it's my goal to continue to excel. It's continue to, provide more value for you through this. But also, over the last 7 to 8 years, it's really been me as an entrepreneur. And I haven't always been an entrepreneur. I've not always been an investor. And that's really not the background that I grew up with. But it's really propelled my expansion and success is growing as a human being, expanding my horizons, expanding my mind, expanding the way that I interact with other people, growing my skills, and really going deeper on the things that I bring uniquely to the table. And I've become addicted to, this life of expansion and becoming the next version of myself. And frankly, it has been what has been the key for me to expand my own capabilities, to expand my level of success, whether it's in real estate, as a business owner, as a salesperson from time to time. I mean, we're always selling, and, that growth has been the factor towards my expansion. And frankly, it's also fun. I mean, it's fun to grow. And I know that, one of the things that I think is key is, recognizing, like Tony Robbins says, that the secret to living is giving. And one of the things that I've loved about this podcast is that I can give that love of growth to you as well. And you can continue to pay it forward. That's how I always ask for you to pay it forward and share these episodes with people that you care about, people that maybe you just met, because that's what the secret to living is all about, giving. And it's also about growth. And secondarily, as we grow together, it's a very fulfilling life to live. And so as we grow endlessly and exponentially, our real estate results tend to follow. And I've found that to be the case in my own life and in our own business. This gives us the ability to further invest in our dreams, in our impact, in our legacy, and the machine compounds on itself. And that's a beautiful thing. And you let that thing roll, and you'll be very surprised at what becomes possible in your life. What at one point seemed impossible starts to become possible. So this is, one of the things that I've gone through in my life over the past 16 months is I'm watching my children, my twins, grow. And now they're 16 months old. And it's further reminding me that the human condition is all about growth. Every day, they are innately driven by the desire to grow and expand. I'm seeing this every single day play out, physically, mentally, emotionally, and I believe spiritually. But, as some examples, I mean, recently they've started walking, and that's all they want to do now, because they learned how to do this new thing. And now they want to get better at it. They want to go faster, and they want to practice climbing. They want to practice saying words. They want to hear us tell them about words. They want to, there's this book that we have, and it's written by the guy who wrote Brown Bear, What Do You See? And it's another book where he's talking about, oh, well, I can do this. Can you do it? And it's shrugging your shoulders. It's waving your arms. It's stomping your feet. And, we're starting to see them do these things. We tell them to, shrug your shoulders, and they're shrugging their shoulders. And what it's showing me is that we were built to grow. And that's where we start to have some excitement. It's like, oh, I learned something new. And it's innately designed within us as human beings to expand. And, learning new concepts, trying, failing, things like even tasting new foods or seeing new people or seeing new experiences. That's what we're meant to do, is we're meant to explore, we're meant to grow. And what we learn later is, and this is actually a quote, it is, you have to dream big before you do big. So the quote exactly is, you have to dream big before doing big. And that's Safe Raymond. And I believe that is true, right? Because at first it's just innate. It's just curiosity. It's just it's just built within us that we're growing, we're learning, we're expanding. But let's start by defining big, right? So I'd like to invite you to either pause this episode right now or put 15 minutes in the calendar for when you can make time to do this later today, or tomorrow. I would invite you also to not procrastinate on this, because your lower self is the one that fears this level of thinking, and it will delay it until you just forget or move on to something else that is, it convinces you is more important. So I want to invite you, and this is an exercise, to take 15 minutes, whether it's right now or a little bit later, to take some time to think about, what does going big mean for me? So I'm going to invite you to grab a blank sheet of paper right at the top. If there were no limits in my life, what would going big look like for me? By the way, this is all unique, right? For you is going to be different than for me, and then from someone else listening to this podcast. So if there were no limits in my life, what would going big look like for me? What would my business look like? What would my real estate look like? My lifestyle? Don't hold back. Let your subconscious mind answer this question and expand upon your thoughts in vivid detail. And when I say your subconscious mind, I mean, just start writing, because you don't know this, and maybe you don't know this, and maybe you do know this, but your subconscious mind is your body. and your hand, when you're writing physically, it's your subconscious mind bringing infinite intelligence to the consciousness, which is a beautiful thing. And you've got to listen. And essentially when you're writing, you're listening and you're just being curious and you're just seeing what happens. And as you put that time clock on, 15 minutes, maybe you do 30, maybe you go a little bit longer. I'm just trying to lower the barrier so that there's no excuse that you don't take action on this exercise. But I want you to think about things like money, cash flow, net worth. Maybe something like fame is important to you. Maybe it's not. What about impact or charity, relationships, social life, geography? Where do you want to live? Where do you want to be? Where do you want to travel, right? Who do you want to be with? What relationships do you want to build? Maybe there's people that you admire that you want to build a relationship with, or maybe there's types of people that you want to be in a regular relationship with or develop a relationship with. Maybe you want to have more options in your life. Maybe you could describe what that actually looks like. Maybe you want to have an amazing dream team on your real estate team or on your personal team, right? Personally, professionally, whatever. Maybe you want to describe how you're spending your time. Maybe you want to describe what your fitness looks like, what your health looks like. Maybe you want to describe your family, the dynamics of your family and how you are interacting with them, how you're growing and how you're loving this life with them together. What about your love life? What about adventure, travel, creativity, so on and so forth? This is the exercise I want you to start with because it's about listening, it's about asking, and it's about being curious about what comes out. So I want to invite you to go ahead and pause the episode right now, do that, come back, and then we'll talk about some of the things that Steven Kotler says about going big. And then we'll talk about some action steps for how you can actually do it. So now, welcome back. If you've gone through this exercise, I applaud you. And I want to thank you for investing in yourself. And if you have not done so already, I want to remind you, today or tomorrow, 15 to 30 minutes is what it's going to take for you to make an investment in yourself. And I think you're going to be very proud of what you find. But let's talk a little bit about what Steven Kotler says about going big. So Steven Kotler says that going big requires focus, right? And now that we have the clarity and we've started to dream big, like we were talking about earlier, if you want to go big, you got to start by dreaming big, right? And there's no limit, right? And so as we start to think about how big do we want to go, now we have to think about, well, so what are some of the mechanics of this? And Steven Kotler says going big requires focus. It involves some element of fear that drives focus and presence. So if what you went through sort of drew a little bit of I just don't know how I'm going to do that, or man, that's going to be a little bit risky, or that's going to be a little bit dangerous, or that's going to be very uncomfortable to get to that point, right? That's a calling card to recognize that you're on the right path. And so how do we get in the zone? One of the things that Steven Kotler talks about so much is flow and flow state. And, psychologists and Steven Kotler have really dug into this concept to recognize, well, how do the greatest athletes perform at the highest level? How do the greatest performers, entertainers perform at the highest level? And for the most part, it's about getting into flow, which is driven by some level of fear, which requires focus. And of course, flow follows focus, paying most attention to the task at hand. It requires endurance. It requires experiencing a bit of pain. And we start to step into the state of flow that makes working towards something that's seemingly impossible feel both enjoyable and effortless. So we've got to leverage this mindset, and it's available to all of us. By leveraging flow, we find an endless reservoir of motivation and productivity, improved learning, long-term memory, enhanced creativity and innovation, amplified feelings of satisfaction and fulfillment, heightened empathy and social awareness, and enriched collaboration and cooperation. So these are components of elevating yourself. These are components of elevating your lifestyle, elevating your business, elevating your team, elevating your leadership, elevating your unique ability. It's about leveraging this mindset, leveraging this flow mindset. And so you've got to really do challenging things. You've got to challenge yourself. You've got to ask yourself big questions. And a few of the action steps that Steven Kotler suggests are really to first dream big, but then break down your impossible down into challenging tasks. So you want to start with your life mission, your large, ambitious goals that we really just kind of talked about, and then break those down into challenging but achievable daily tasks. And this is a practical way to do this, right? It's about thinking big, but it's about then reverse engineering this big thought into what can I do on a daily basis that's challenging, that stretches me, that makes me feel like I'm making progress. And it's never going to be perfect, right? So if you get a little bit off track, it's look back and say, that's okay. Now let me get back on track. Number two, it's set your schedule. And one of the things that Steven suggests is find 90 plus minutes a day of uninterrupted time for your highest hard goals, for the things that you are most committed to. Find 90 plus minutes per day of uninterrupted focus and work on those things. And so, of course, those goals for you will be different than they are for me. So what does that actually look like? You have to decide. Number three, and I love this one, and this is really a core element of Elevate Podcast. It's about expanding your knowledge and capabilities. And so what he's talking about is that regularly learning new things encourages your brain to form connections between different ideas. One of the things that this makes me think of is Katie and I have been learning chess recently. And you think, well, your last name is Chesser. You've probably been playing chess for, since day one of your life. And no, I haven't. In fact, I really never played growing up, which is really interesting. But as I'm learning chess, I'm seeing connections between some of the decision making, playing that game than there is to, making decisions in real estate or moving our chess pieces, so to speak, in our business. And the same for our life. And really what I've learned is that life is a big chess game, and it's beautiful to be able to, to strengthen those connections while playing this game, which is fun, but it requires your focus. It requires your attention. It requires blocking things out, forgetting about things that are stressing you out. I use that as an example of it's expanding my knowledge. It's expanding my capabilities. And as I study the game more, as I study openings, as I study closings, as I study, strategy, I start to learn, well, wait a minute, now I can apply this to connecting other ideas or different ideas or how we're showing up for the podcast. And, of course, reading and learning and listening to podcasts like this is a great example of expanding your knowledge and capabilities. But think about, well, what is it that you need to learn? What capabilities do you need to expand to go where you want to go, to live the life and have the mission, obtain the mission that you have for your life, obtain the large, ambitious goals that you have, and to achieve those challenging but achievable daily tasks, right? So why is not going big so bad for us? Because we started the beginning of the podcast by sharing the quote that Steven Kotler shared with me on the podcast, that humans are literally designed to go big, and not going big is cripplingly bad for us. So why is it bad? Hey guys, I want to remind you to check out CF Capital. CF Capital is the premier boutique real estate investment firm in the Midwest and Southeast region of the United States. We are a national real estate investment firm with a purpose. We provide property investment and asset management solutions to help passive investors maximize returns on high-value multifamily communities. But our investments go far beyond acquisitions. We invest in people. We are in the business of elevating communities and raising the bar for everyone within our ecosystem. CF Capital is a real estate investment firm focused on the acquisition and operation of multifamily assets. We confidently deliver tax-advantaged, stable cash flow and capital appreciation with a margin of safety. By investing alongside our team, investors can preserve and grow their wealth without having to deal with tenants, termites, or toilets. Investors come and stay for the outsized returns we create in our deals while appreciating the ancillary opportunity to make a bigger impact that only CF Capital can provide. If you're an investor and want to invest with us, here's how. Learn more about CF Capital at cfcapllc.com or by simply clicking the link in the show notes of this episode. We will see you on the inside of this powerful community, so let's elevate communities together. So let me share a story from my own experience, and maybe you have something that is similar for you, and maybe there's something that will resonate for you. So when I was working as a W-2 employee in the corporate world nearly a decade ago, something was telling me I was not on the right path. And I think I've shared this story before on this podcast and just kind of riffed. It was maybe one of the very, very first episodes. And again, I'm embarrassed to even point you to early episodes of the podcast because we've come so far. But if you do have any interest in that, it's probably the first episode. But I looked around and I saw many who were decades ahead of me in the corporate world, living a life of what I thought was a life of toleration, and perhaps in some sense, capitulation to our natural tendency to be adventurers and explorers. And I think, some people may say, well, that's a little much, Tyler. I mean, what do you mean our natural tendency to be adventurers and explorers? I believe that's what we're all built for. And if you look back in human history, the people who, are still written about in history books are those who are adventurers and explorers. And if you observe the natural tendencies of babies, they're adventurers, they're explorers. And I didn't know it at the time, but I just knew that I didn't want to be like some of the people I was seeing around me. And it's not that I didn't love these people. It's not that I didn't appreciate them as human beings, because truthfully, they're all wonderful people to the core. And they're all great people. And there's still many of them who I keep in touch with. But I think that our ancestors were required to explore and adventure, and be adventurers, because it almost was a requirement for survival in many aspects, and, for continuing to grow, or passing along their genes in many aspects. But I think in the modern life, to a large degree, a steady paycheck and a perception of comfort and safety and the fear of the unknown removes the incentive to go big. And so I think, maybe you can resonate with this, or maybe you see this in your own life. Maybe you've seen this with other family members, and you're starting to think about, well, I could see that, people feeling comfortable with a steady paycheck and this safety of certainty, and what I've done in the past is what I'm going to do in the future, and therefore that's a safe path to go on, and I don't need to go big, right? I don't need to take a risk. I don't need to be courageous. I don't need to be an adventurer. I don't need to be an explorer. So as I think back, I wallowed in the state of dissatisfaction for at least a couple years, and I'm thankful that eventually I started exploring what else could be possible for my future. But I can tell you that until I got to that point, I felt dissatisfied. I felt frustrated. I felt limited. I also was basically broke financially and, in many aspects, spiritually, of course, emotionally. It was just kind of a squashing type of experience. It was like almost my fire was being extinguished, as I was kind of just plugging it in every single day and, doing what I was told to do and following the path of others who perhaps were capitulating and ignoring this call to be an adventurer and to be an explorer and to expand and to grow and to give that impact to other people. But I was then pushed to make a change. I found real estate and this world of personal development as a result, this world of mindset and continued mind expansion, which then was like, oh my goodness, I feel alive again. And, there was some of the times where I felt alive because I was in some risky positions and I was in some very challenging circumstances. There were things that I just felt like overwhelmed by. But because of the fact that I was so overwhelmed and I basically jumped into the deep end as a real estate investor, and at the time as an agent and a broker, I was overwhelmed with all the things that I didn't know and all the things that I was doing wrong and all the mistakes that I had. It pushed me to a point where I had to immerse myself. I had no other option but to immerse myself in what the best of the best were doing, which was investing in themselves through personal development, which was expanding and optimizing their mindset, stepping into this life of a growth mindset that says anything is possible and life is happening for me, not to me. And anything that happens is an opportunity to grow. I'm not fixed. I have another level to expand to. And then continued mind expansion by reading biographies, by investing in coaching, by investing in masterminds and going to conferences and investing in networking groups and all these beautiful things. I was pushed to make that change. And then over the coming years, I started to say, that's really the secret. The secret is continuing to grow, continuing to expand, and allowing yourself to be an adventurer and explorer and being very curious about what's really, really possible for me. So maybe you've had a similar experience in your life, or maybe you have observed friends or family members who you've either admired for taking big risks and laying it all out on the line to live a bigger life, or maybe that maybe drew you to commit to your own continual expansion and finding perhaps this podcast. And so I want to thank you for that. I want to encourage you to continue to build on that momentum. And I want to congratulate you on that as well, because you know what, we're all on some sort of a similar path. And while we have many different aspects of our paths, I just want to, congratulate you for that. So let's talk about how we can go big in reality with action steps to go big in real estate and in your life. So I want to share with you 5 action steps that you can apply to some of these big dreams that you just sat down and worked through. And I hope this adds tremendous value to you. So number 1 is think bigger. So what you wrote down on your piece of paper is a great start, but I want to encourage you to add a literal or prophetic 0 or 2, or maybe 10 to your previously conceived notions. Tim Ferriss said it best. He said, think big and don't listen to people who tell you it can't be done. Life is too short to think small. And I totally agree. We recently had a couple friends, unfortunately, tragically pass away about a month ago, exactly a month ago at today's recording. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this podcast with you today, is that life is too short to delay this. It's not about, hey, that's a good idea, and at one point in time I'll do that, and I'll really think about going big at some point when it's the right time. It's never the right time. The right time is now. So you've got to go big. You've got to think bigger. And so how do we do this? Right? Some of the things I just shared with you is surround yourself with people above you and people with big ambitions. And where do you find these people? Through masterminds, through meetups, through conferences, networking groups. Just find those people and find a way to truly add value to them without any expectation for anything in return. We become what we think about and who we surround ourselves with. Here's another option. Leverage your reference points. Study the greats, study their investment strategies, the markets they invest in, their business processes, and integrate those within what you're doing. Steal shamelessly and improve from people like Sam Zell, Donald Bren, Stephen Ross. Research them, read their biographies, their memoirs, listen to their media appearances, integrate the success that they've achieved that overlaps in the vision of what you're doing, right? And I'm just sharing you a few examples of great real estate investors, people who have done big things in the real estate investment world. These are just some examples. Who else has done what you want to do in your life? Success leaves clues. So go find those clues and integrate them within your life. I want to share with you some more wisdom on thinking bigger, which is always borrowed. By the way, wisdom is borrowed. It's never owned, right? There's no real original thought. It's all passed through. And just think about that so you can go find this. But a few of these things, words of wisdom that I wanted to share with you, one of which is Leonardo DiCaprio. He said, a single idea from the human mind can build cities. An idea can transform the world and rewrite all the rules. So that's one great idea for thinking bigger. It starts with a single idea. The idea can then build a city. It can build a future. It can build a family. It can build a company. It can build a real estate empire. So transform your world and rewrite the rules by thinking bigger. Mark Zuckerberg said, ideas don't come out fully formed. They only become clearer as you work on them. So you have to get started. So as your ideas come out, just be willing to refine that idea as you work toward it. And by the way, it's all about course correction. As you work towards your idea, you may get feedback that your idea was somewhat incomplete, and now you can further complete it by listening to that feedback. So just go get started. And Mac Duke said, small thinking keeps small businesses small. And I love that. And it's so true because it really all starts there. It all starts with how we're thinking about what is possible. And if you think something's possible, or if you don't think something's possible, well, then you're right. And that's what Mac Duke is saying. Here's another one. Richard Branson, who is living a big life, has continued to show what's possible, and he continues to expand his own impossible. He said, if people aren't calling you crazy, you aren't thinking big enough. So let's let that wisdom challenge us to say, all right, what are my dreams? What were my dreams? How can I think bigger? How can I add a literal or prophetic 0 or 2 or 10 to my previously conceived notions? So number one is think bigger. Number two, multiply yourself. Who, not how is an amazing concept. And I want to give you some options of how you can apply this multiplication method to everything that you're doing. Build a team. Number one, build a team. You can build a team in real estate through things like accounting, your legal team, property or asset management, banking, administration, acquisitions, debt, operations, marketing, investors, investor relations, construction management, analyst, human resources, IT, insurance. The list goes on and on. Think about who are you bringing into your world who can multiply you, because you should not be doing all these things. If you want to build a real estate empire, you must build a team. Here's another option. Find someone who has a dream team like this and partner with them. Invest with them. Do things with them. Learn from them. Find someone who has a team. Whether you build the team or someone else does, align with people who are surrounding themselves with other people who are multiplying themselves as well. Here's another option. Plug into a team and leverage your own unique ability or talents alongside that of others. You may be a team member. Be a who for someone else's who, right? Grow and leverage your own unique ability and talents by being a part of a team where other people are great. Other people have a growth mindset. Other people are expanding and living a life of their dreams. They're growing, they're giving, they're doing these beautiful things. Or here's another option. There's a mixture of any of these ideas, right? Maybe you build a team yourself. Maybe you plug into another team. Maybe you invest with other people who have a dream team, and maybe you're learning and maybe you're growing. There's so many different options, but the point is multiply yourself. Here's another action step to going big in real estate and your life. Number 3, go deeper on the 20% of the things that are producing 80% of your results. If you listen to our episode 298 with Ben Hardy, by the way, our second interview with Ben Hardy, who wrote the book 10X is Easier Than 2X. What this is all about, number 3, go deeper on the 20% of the things producing 80% of your results, and remove 80% of the things that are only producing 20% of your results. By the way, this is in the thought process of what are your goals. So 10X your value and transform as a result. It takes a lot of courage. I want to encourage you to listen to that episode, read the book. It takes a lot of courage to really go in this direction. But if you want to go big, it is about chipping away at the things that you shouldn't be doing. It's about removing those. It's about stripping them. So what are you spending 80% of your time doing that's generating 20% of your results? What about the opposite? So let's delegate or get rid of the 80%. Have the courage to go deep and leave comfort behind. That's number 3. Number 4, be willing to fail constantly. Fail fast and fail often. Failure means you're bumping up on a new zone of competency. Expand your competency zone as a result of being willing to fail. The growth mindset says a failure is an opportunity for feedback for me to then iterate and adapt and improve. The fixed mindset says I'm a failure and I'll never be a success. So obviously, let's lean into the growth mindset of this concept. Iterate, adapt, evolve. That's the process for failure. And that's how, if you want to get closer to a yes in sales, you've got to get a lot of no's. If you want to get it closer to a big dream or a big goal, you've got to have a lot of failures. It's all about failure along the way. There's a great book. It's Principles by Ray Dalio. And he talks about, the way to success is all about, it's a failure, it's an iteration, and then it's a little bit further along towards your path. It's a failure, it's an iteration, it's a little bit further towards your path. And so I just love that visual. And I definitely want to encourage you to read Principles and the Changing World Order. But if you think about it, somebody as successful as Ray Dalio is proving that failure is the path. Mistakes, setbacks. If you want to go where you want to go, you got to look at these failures to say, oh, this is a game. This is great. I'm glad that we failed. I'm glad that we didn't do this right. So now we have an opportunity to do it better next time. Because sometimes reading something in a book or listening to it in a podcast, it's helpful because it helps you avoid mistakes and failure. And certainly we want to do that as much as we can. But when we have our own failure, it's now let's receive the gift of that failure. Let's receive the growth opportunity of that experience to say, now, how can we do this better? Number 5, the last step here is to rinse and repeat. Your new ceiling becomes your new floor. And so as you continue to raise this competency zone of what's possible in your life, you're rinsing and repeating. You're saying, all right, I did it before, I'm going to do it again. But you remain focused on this big vision that you have, these goals that you have, these dreams that you have. And they've got to resonate with you. By the way, that was something that I think is key. It can't be someone else's dream. It can't be, well, so-and-so did this, so I want to do that too. Or maybe it's all materialistic. I want to encourage you to think about things like, who do I want to become? What do I want to learn? What relationships do I want to have? What impact do I want to have? What legacy do I want to have? Because you got to make it count. As I mentioned, we had friends who lost their lives a month ago. And it was, it's absolutely tragic. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And, we continue to be, really in a grieving mode, to be honest with you. And what it's made me think about is we've got to do what resonates most with us in our life. And we've got to dream big. We've got to go big. We've got to give in a big way. We've got to make a big impact, because I think that's really our duty. And we've got to make it count. At the end of the day, this is the only life we get as far as we know. And real estate is a vehicle that we've all chosen to allow us to go bigger and to allow us to build and expand and compound this machine. And so I want to encourage you to do that. I want to encourage you to rinse and repeat. I want to encourage you to find a new ceiling, that was previously your floor. right? Or a new floor that was previously your ceiling. I want to encourage you to challenge yourself. I want to encourage you to live a life that becomes comfortable being uncomfortable. So in summary, I wanted to share with you a few other words of wisdom from some of the great people across history. Andrew Carnegie says, "As I grow older, I pay less attention to what men say. I just watch what they do." I love that. And it's not about saying, it's not about taking some time to write down things, but it is then about planning for action. It's about planning for moving forward and incorporating some of these things into what we're doing. Sam Zell, one of the greatest real estate entrepreneurs of our modern time, he said, "Risk is the ultimate differentiator. I've always had a deep and complex relationship with it. I'm not a reckless person, but taking risks is really the only way to consistently achieve above average returns in life as well as in investments." And I love that. So we've got to take a risk. There are some things that we're going to have to let go of that feel risky, that seem risky, that seems like, well, we could lose. Well, you got to be willing to risk your comfort. You got to be willing to risk your certainty. You got to be willing to risk your feelings of stability to go where you want to go. And if you want to achieve above average returns, if you want to go big, it's about embracing that risk, leveraging that risk. Being the ultimate differentiator is huge. Tony Robbins also said, "You see in life, lots of people know what to do." This is huge. Lots of people know what to do, but few people actually do what they know. Knowing is not enough. You must take action. And so what I'm challenging you to do today is to think big, to dream big, and then to make a plan. Reverse engineer that plan to what are you going to do today, this week, this month, this quarter, this year. And by the way, sometimes you'll be surprised and you'll be excited that it doesn't always have to come down to just you working hard, right? Your consistency and your commitment, your resiliency, your relentlessness, these are great things. These are amazing things. And I believe that the universe rewards that type of commitment, that type of consistency, that type of intelligent, inspired action. And how the universe rewards it is sometimes things come faster. Sometimes they're delayed. And that is it's a test for our commitment. But I think that action then starts to compound and things start to happen just naturally. And so I want to encourage you to immerse yourself in this life of dreaming big and going big. And I think that not only is it going to be a fun life, it's going to be a rewarding life, but other people around you are watching. And let's think about when a pebble drops into a pond. Of course the pebble hits the water and it goes to the bottom. But what also happens is that there's a ripple effect. And more so than we can ever imagine, we're having an impact on so many people. So I think it's your duty. I think it's all of our duty to go big. And I want to encourage you to re-listen to this podcast because the power of going big and why it's so important and how to do it in real estate and in your life is a game changer. And I know that anything is possible for you. So I want to encourage you to re-listen to this podcast, teach this to someone else, have a conversation with someone else, whether they're your spouse, maybe they're your siblings, maybe they're somebody that you work with, or maybe they're people on your team, or maybe they're just friends, either that you've caught up with recently or you haven't caught up with recently. Have a discussion with them about what we talked about today. I want to thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Until next time, Elevate Nation, we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Elevate. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to elevate your results by taking immediate action on what you learned. For more, visit elevatepod.com.